I'm proud to know him as my friend, Dan Hawkins.
Well, thank you, Emil. It's always a pleasure to come to the Pachyderm Club and speak, and especially this year. I will first start out with thanking you, each and every one of you, for sending the best caucus to Topeka that we've had in 13 years. Believe? Yes. It is, I started out 13 years ago in 2013, and in 2013 we had 97 Republicans, and we would go into a meeting and we'd come out and it was like a covey of quail. They'd fly all over the place. You couldn't keep those 97 together to save your life. I actually think many times back, the speaker at that time was Ray Merrick, and I thought, wow, I don't know how he did it. I really don't, because it was hard. Having 97 Republicans, sometimes we'd have a really tough time getting 63 votes to get anything done. But back then, you had 5 different factions in 97 Republicans. You had some real liberals, some real conservatives, some moderately conservatives, some people that kind of went either way depending on what the issue was. And then you had a pretty good chunk of moderates. Jennifer is shaking her head. She remembers that time. Today, we have 88 Republicans, and I would say we have 87 really, really good Republicans. We have one that votes with the Democrats most of the time, but that 3 extra that you sent us in the last election makes all the difference in the world. Truly does, makes all the difference in the world. We had 85, but out of that 85, we had, actually 2 that almost never voted with us, and so we couldn't get to 84, which was what it takes to either pass a constitutional amendment or override a veto from the governor. And so it was always pretty difficult for us. In fact, in the last term, we had one Democrat. His name was Marvin Robinson. You've heard about him before. He was a Democrat, but he was really probably the most conservative Democrat that was on that side at that time, and he voted with us, and that's how we got the 9 or 10 overrides. We got that during that time was just because we had Marvin Robinson on our side, so the big stuff we were able to override. But this year was different. This year, it really didn't matter what we were working on. We had 85, sometimes 86, that stuck together all the time. We didn't have a problem getting overrides done. As a matter of fact, we set a record this year. The record before had been 9 overrides in one day. This year, the legislature had 12 overrides in one day. We'd already overridden, we had already overridden the governor twice, which we'll talk about that here in a little bit. So we had 14 total overrides this year out of 18 bills that were vetoed. That's pretty phenomenal. That shows just how good the Republican caucus was that's there this term. I say they're the best. They are the best. They're the best in my 13 years. They're just awesome group of people. So then we had a budget, and we really worried about this year the budget and the governor actually possibly vetoing the whole budget. She had made some comments to folks before a session ever started that she was probably going to veto pretty much anything that the Republicans sent her. And most of the stuff that we want, she did do that. And she also said that she was going to hold up the budget for Medicaid expansion. And I go, well, good luck to that. We're going to be here a long time if we can't get the votes, because I'm not going to give you Medicaid expansion. The good thing is she didn't veto the whole budget, but she did veto 33 line items. And out of those 33 line items, we overrode 15 of them. So we had, almost 29 total overrides for this year, which is, I guarantee, is a record. This governor has really become the veto governor, because in her time here, this is her 7th year, she has vetoed a lot of bills. Probably, I don't know, We're probably around 150 in 7 years, 140, something like that. There's a lot. There's just a lot of vetoes out there. But this term, we're going to, if she's going to veto, we're going to override them. And I expect next year to be exactly the same way this year went. But I want to start out really with one of the biggest things, and this is really probably the most historic session that we've had, certainly in our lifetime. You know, I thought, I didn't actually know exactly how long it had been that they'd been working on judicial selection. In my 13 years, this year was my third vote on judicial selection. But then I found out the day we passed judicial selection in the House and the Senate. Actually, the Senate had already passed it. The House passed it. Was the day that the Kansas Chamber, had their annual meeting. And I was at the annual meeting, and I was actually talking with Derek Schmidt, our 2nd District Congressman. And, you know, he said, "Hey, what a fantastic job you guys did today getting that done." I said, "Yeah, 13 years now." He said, "No, not 13, 20. He said, "You got to go back to 2005 was when they actually started working on judicial selection. So 20 years later, we got it done. And it's a big deal. It is a huge deal for us to get judicial selection done. During my tenure, we'd always focused on using the federal model, and quite frankly, we never could even get close. I think the best vote we ever got on using the federal model was like 77 in the House. You got to have 84 for a constitutional amendment. Well, this year, a whole group of folks came together and really started talking about, there was a lot of polling that was done on judicial selection. And what they found out was direct election was the method that we could do that would actually get it not only across the line, hopefully in the legislature, but the people of the state of Kansas would support. The polling showed that the direct elections would get us somewhere towards 70% of the vote. So, you know, it doesn't really matter what we pass in the House and the Senate if we can't get it across the line out in the public, then it's really for naught. So we really started working towards that. And there were folks certainly that didn't like going to the direct election method, but for me, I said, you know, I've lived in Sedgwick County for 40 years now, and in that time, that's what we have. We have direct elections, and it works really good for us here in Sedgwick County. And in fact, about half of the state judicial districts have direct election. The other have the governor appoint. And the governor gets to appoint whoever she wants. We don't have any say in it. So, you know, from my standpoint, you know, we take to Topeka our experiences and the things that we have seen work, and certainly it's worked very well here in Sedgwick County in the 18th Judicial District. And so it didn't take much for me to get in huge support of that effort. We actually passed out of the House and the Senate with exactly the amount we needed, 27 and 84. There's always a few that'll pull off on something like that, but we got it passed. And now it's up to our residents of this state to go out and really work hard to make sure that we get the direct elections across the board. So it's going to be on the primary ballot in 2026. So look for it. I hope all of you will go out and spread the word about how necessary it is. And certainly I know our judge back here with Kevin Smith would love to see the court changed, and we would too. The governor has really set the court in a direction that's very liberal. Our Attorney General, I've heard him talk many, many times, Chris, has said that the Kansas Supreme Court is the second most liberal court in the state, right behind California. That doesn't really sound too good for us to be second right behind California when it comes to a liberal court. So we have a chance to change that. How it'll work is the direct elections will take a period of time for us to get there. If we can get it passed in the 26th election, in 28 they'll direct elect 2, 30, and then 32. And in 32, we should have a court that looks more like the state of Kansas, and that being a conservative court. So So that was the most historic thing that could happen. Probably, I would say it's a transformational thing, and it's certainly, for us, a generational change. This is truly probably the most important vote that we have in our generation to set the state on the course to healing when it comes to our Supreme Court. The next big piece that I would say that we passed was the Help Not Harm Act. You know, Governor Kelly had vetoed that so many times, it's pathetic. I think it was 3 different times that she had vetoed that. But we were able to override that. And what Help Not Harm was, if you don't know that, I don't ever remember bill numbers, so it's just too many, I can't remember. But Help Not Harm actually stops the gender-affirming care of surgery and hormone blockers for children under the age of 18. That's a necessary thing. And it's interesting, we started working on this 3 years ago, and like I said, she's vetoed it 2 times before this year and vetoed it for the 3rd time this year. But even liberal United Kingdom understands that this is a bad thing. They've literally banned it there. And so why does it take us so long to figure that out? Not that we didn't figure it out, it's just that we just didn't have the votes to override the governor. But this year, that was the second. And those were the first 2 things that we overrode the governor on, and that was during the regular session. That was not during veto session. So those were all done early on. So it kind of set the tone for the year. The next thing that we really spent a lot of time on was election integrity, safeguarding our ballot boxes, making sure that everybody believes that our elections are fair and that they have all the safeguards put in place. Now, does that mean we've got everything done? Absolutely not. We got to continue to work on our elections every year. But I would say we have to be now probably in the top 5, 6, 7 in the nation when it comes to election integrity. So here's some things that we did this year, and all of these things took a veto override to make finally happen. Biden bucks. You remember back 2 years ago, I guess it would have been in 22, Biden sent out a lot of federal money to the states to try to get the states to register as many Democrats as they could. It was really about registering Democrats. And so this year we banned Biden bucks. That was a really good thing. And although I wouldn't put that at the top, actually the next one I put at the top when it comes to election integrity, and that is doing away with the 3-day grace period. I can't believe that I was actually one that voted for that clear back in, I think we put that in 17, I think's when it was. And it had a big vote in both the Senate and the House. Little did we know just how bad of a vote that was. And we had tried, again, for a couple of years to do away with, make election day, do away with that 3-day grace period. But this year, we finally got it done. And, of course, the Democrats demonize us for doing that. They say we're disenfranchising voters. And quite frankly, that's not right. We're not disenfranchising voters. Actually, having a 3-day grace period, we learn actually probably disenfranchises more voters because over 2,000 ballots every single election period come in after Election Day that have no postmark and they cannot be counted. So if you really want to talk about disenfranchising voters, I think the 3-day grace period does. And by the way, if you really want to vote by mail, you can do it. You don't have to wait until the last minute to get them in. And if you do wait till the last minute, drive it to a ballot drop box at your county election place. In this situation, you can go to our election office in the old courthouse, which I did, and drop it in the drop box there in the county. I've in probably the last 6 years, I have voted by mail. And the reason why is I never know where I'm going to be on Election Day, and I dang sure don't want to miss getting my vote in. And so if I'm going to be close, I'm going to drive it in and I'm going to drop it. If not, which most of the time, as soon as I get my ballot, I fill it out, put it right in the mail. It's still got 15 days to get there, so it shouldn't be a problem. But doing away with the 3-day grace period and making Election Day is probably, when it comes to elections, probably the most important thing we did this year. Big deal. Another thing that's kind of made its round around the United States is this ranked choice voting. And this year we banned, not that they could use ranked choice voting in Kansas. We want to make sure that they can't. And so we actually did a bill that banned ranked choice voting. And it was interesting here a couple of days ago, I received a notice that there's a group of former moderate to liberal Republican legislators that are going around the state talking about ranked choice voting. And I said, why are they even talking about that? We just banned it. How are they going to make that work? Well, I think they're probably wanting to stir up some sentiment that ranked choice voting is good. And I don't understand why anybody would ever think that ranked choice voting is something that we should have. Never. So we did away with that. I call that the biggest voting scam there is. It truly is a voting scam. Next thing, and this is really a big thing too, and you wouldn't think we'd have to do this, but we passed a constitutional amendment that only citizens can vote. So that's going to be on your ballot next year as well. Why do we need to do that? If you look at our Constitution, it actually doesn't say. It leaves it kind of in limbo. There's nothing out there in the Constitution that says that a non-citizen can't vote. And so we decided it's time to straighten that one out too and make sure that we don't have that. And what better time to do it than when we've got certainly a good caucus that'll make sure it happens. And so you'll see a constitutional amendment on the ballot for not allowing non-citizens, only U.S. citizens can vote. We also did a bill that prohibited foreign nationals from pumping money into issue campaigns. Go back to value them both. Any constitutional amendment that would be on the ballot is really fair game. We found out that there was a lot of money by foreigners that come into our elections when it comes to constitutional amendments. And so we have now banned any foreign money from coming into those elections. So as you can see, we really did a lot of work on our election integrity, and I really give it to the House Chairman, Pat Proctor. Pat Proctor has done a phenomenal job when it comes to election integrity. He's fought the fight. He's pushed these bills through and these constitutional amendments through, so he's done a great job, so I give him all the credit. The next thing we did was supporting life. Value them both back in 22 really set us back when it lost, and nobody ever dreamed that it was going to lose by 20%, and certainly nobody dreamed that it would lose in Sedgwick County or probably most of the other counties where it lost. It's just we didn't think that was going to happen, but it did. And so that's the reason why, again, straightening out our judicial selection is going to be so important. That truly will make a difference in that area. But we still have things that we can work on and do when it comes to supporting life. One of those was the Pregnancy Compassion Awareness Program. We put more money into that this year in our budget. So that we believe that if a person is pregnant and is going to have a baby, we want to give them as much resources as they can so they don't go the other direction and abort. And I don't know if you guys have been paying attention. This is not in my notes here, but we have, whether you believe it or not, we have become the abortion capital of the Midwest. The amount of abortions are just skyrocketing in Kansas. Now, that may change over time as other states, their laws change, but right now, people certainly in the Midwest are coming to Kansas or Colorado. Those are the two places where they can. This was an interesting one, was child support during pregnancy. I don't know if you guys saw that bill that we passed, but basically it was a bill that basically makes it, if an unwed mother, if she gets pregnant and she's not married, there's really nothing out there that says that there's anybody that has to help her out during that pregnancy. Well, this bill basically makes it to where the father now is just as responsible for the medical bills during the pregnancy as that unwed mother is. And in addition, that was really kind of a cool one. Even by itself, that was a neat bill to pass. But then we had a Democrat on the Senate side, and I don't know if you guys know this story, but he was one that the governor supported over Vic Miller, who was the minority leader in the House, left the House, was going to run for the Senate, but him and the governor had had a little tiff, and she decided she didn't want him in the Senate, so she spent thousands and thousands of dollars. Actually, we always like to say she spent $2.1 million to make sure Vic Miller didn't get in the Senate, because she spent all that money actually against us, but she didn't win ours either. So she literally come up short on everything. But she got this senator called Patrick Schmidt, by the name of Patrick Schmidt. He's quite a guy. And during the debate in the Senate on this bill, he decides to put an amendment that basically gives an unwed mother a tax exemption for that baby. So when the baby's born, or if it's a stillbirth, those are the only two situations, you produce either what is called a certificate of stillbirth, or of course a birth certificate, and you get a deduction for that child during its time in the womb. So essentially, that first year, they get a double exemption. Well, when that first came out, and I wasn't on the Senate, but I certainly talk with the Senate president a lot, all the time. Ty and I have really become great partners in our legislative system and making sure we get things done. And he said, when that amendment came out, he said, we really didn't know what it was. And he said, we were kind of starting to try to work towards killing it, because that's what you do whenever somebody does, on the Democrat side, does something stupid. Well, they looked at that amendment and they go, wow, we love this. He said, he tells the story a lot better, but immediately, it went across the body in the Senate, the caucus, and of course they overwhelmingly passed that amendment, to the chagrin of the Democrats. The Democrats, except for one, didn't like it. Now, the guy that did it, he couldn't back off. He had to keep pressing and saying that it was a good deal, even though none of the Democrats were following him with it. So it's really kind of funny watching that all happen. But it did become a part of the bill, came over to us, and certainly we loved it, and so we passed that. So that's one that brings a smile to your face. It really will. And then the other life issue was a human development video. Now, most people haven't heard about this one, but basically what we did, we said that any time that mainly it's in junior high and high school, that there is either a sex education class or a human development class, that they have to show a 3-minute video of the development of a child in the womb. Want to make sure that people realize that is not a bowl full of mush, that it's actually a human being in there, in the womb, and that human being's life is very significant to this world, and that we want to protect that. So that's just a way to teach kids that what they're saying, that's not a human. It is a human, and they can see that development in the womb. So those were our life issues that we passed this year. Then the next one was really protecting the vulnerable. We've got this huge waiting list, especially on in Medicaid. I'm talking about, especially with the physically disabled and intellectually and developmentally disabled. And the IDD population is the one that we have a massive waiting list. It's probably around 4,800 right now, somewhere around there. Last year, we were able to have the money to take 500 individuals off that waiting list. This year, we had to pare it back. I'll get into just a little bit why we had to pare some of our spending back, but we took another 200 people off of that waiting list. So we've got to continue to do that every year, but it takes money. It costs a lot of money to get folks off of that waiting list and onto the Medicaid waivers that serve them. So then the next thing that we did, both in the Senate and the House, that I think is very significant. In the Senate, Ty decided to form a committee called COGE, not DOGE, COGE. We don't have a department, we have a committee. a committee on government efficiency headed by Renee Erickson, Senator Renee Erickson, and they were looking at things in the system that they could do to become more efficient. And I think we had, and I can't tell you exactly what bills, I think we had 2 or 3 bills come out of that committee during the session that we did get passed. On the House side, every single year, and I've worked under this governor for my entire leadership career. She came in 19. I started my career in leadership in 19 as majority leader. And so I know that lady pretty well, and I understand what she's going to do. And I think the easiest way to say it is, her job, she takes an oath to protect and uphold the laws of the United States and the state of Kansas. But that's not her practice. Her practice is she's going to do what she wants, and if you don't like it, sue her. And until you sue her and stop her, she's going to do exactly what she wants. And so even in last year, at the end of last year, there were 3 different vetoes that she did, and I'm talking about in 2024, that we believe were unconstitutional vetoes. I went to the AG about that, and he did not believe we could win in court. He really believed that if we brought the lawsuit against her, that we might actually set a precedent and lose and cause us even more problems. And so he didn't take it up. And so I thought, well, what can I do in the House to bring awareness? So I decided to bring a brand new committee. It's a select committee. It's a select committee on government oversight. It's headed by Representative Christy Williams out of Augusta. And I don't know how many of you know Christy, but Christy's got a lot of passion in her body. I always say she's got more passion in her little finger than most people have in her whole body. She's a very tenacious person and a great person to lead that effort. And in fact, she's already started, it's just 2 weeks ago, we had a select, that select committee on government oversight came in to study what the governor was doing on SNAP. SNAP is our Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. Food stamps, that's what it is. We use so many acronyms, and we ought to let people know what those acronyms are, but it's food stamps, that's what it is. And what we had found out, what we started hearing in the press, and we certainly didn't hear it from the governor, but we started hearing in the press that the federal government is ready to start taking back money from our SNAP program because our governor and her administration is not administering it correctly. And in fact, what we found out during this committee meeting is that over 12% of the SNAP applications that are submitted, over 12% of all of that that's done is done in error. 12%, and that's millions and millions of dollars that she has overpaid and allowed people who may not have been even eligible for SNAP to come on board. So it's truly a waste, and it certainly could be fraud. And we wanted to bring awareness to that. So that's what this Government Oversight Committee is all about. It's to bring transparency and awareness to the problems within state government. We really didn't have a way to do that because certainly I can go talk to the press, and the press will decide whether they even want to write about it. And certainly the press we have here in Kansas doesn't write about the governor. They protect the governor. And so getting it out through the press is a little bit difficult unless you have a committee. When you have a committee, they have to come in. They don't have to, but they will. They will come in and cover it, and then they'll report on it. And so I decided the best way we can put transparency to some of our problems in the state of Kansas, and especially in the administration, is to have a committee that brings light to these issues. And so that committee is a committee that does not meet on a normal basis, a scheduled basis. It meets when we have an issue. We need oversight on that issue. We need the public to understand what's going on. And that committee has subpoena power. So they do have the ability to compel members of the administration to come in and give them the information they need. So that was important because a lot of times they just say, no, I'm not going to come. Well, this committee does have subpoena power, so we can make them come in and give us the information we need. So that's the big things that really happened this year. The next thing I'm going to talk about that's big, though, is the budget, because I want to get that in before I have to start answering questions. The budget has been, since 1957, we have operated off of a system where the governor produces a budget, then we react to that budget. That's the only budget we work on is that budget. And over the years, over all my years, the biggest complaint that I hear from members of the Appropriation and Ways and Means Committee is that they don't have the time to really dig in. So here's how it works. The governor produces a budget. She presents it to the joint session of the House and the Senate at the State of the State. She talks about it. That's when she really kind of lays things out. Then the next day she presents it to our committees, our Appropriations Committee and our Ways and Means Committee. But then it's another 3 weeks before we actually receive the budget and can actually start working on it. So our Appropriations and Ways and Means are sitting there for 3 weeks with really nothing to do. And so Ty and I went to her clear back in 2013 and said, hey, this is a problem. Can you give us that earlier? And she said, no. I go, well. And I said, next question is why? I knew why. But the next question is why? Well, because I don't want you to have it, because then I lose all my thunder on State of the State night. I don't get to use that as a thing for me to put out for all the people to hear. I understand that. I get that. I suppose maybe other governors probably would feel the same way, but quite frankly, we don't have time to wait. We have to move forward. And so Ty and I last year decided we're going to, for the first time since 1957, produce our own budget, a legislative budget. And I got to tell you, that's not an easy task. We actually brought 23 people together in October and November of last year to really start the process. And we had our first budget from a legislature introduced in the House on the first day of session. So that was a base budget. Then it goes to our budget committees and they start working on it. Then it went to the Senate. Senate worked on it, and then we passed a budget. So the governor hated it. Imagine that. The governor hated it. Why does she hate it? You're taking my power away from me. She said that in the press. I read many articles where Dan Hawkins just has nothing but disdain for the governor and wants to take all of her power away. No, actually, but that's not the reason. I mean, it sounds good and it's funny, but that's not the reason. The reason is for us to be able to get that budget and get to work on it and do a good job of budgeting. And the reason why that's important is because, COVID injected a lot of money into this state. And that money is all gone. And now we are now facing a tough budget cycle again. And we had to cut. And we ended up cutting $210 million out of the budget versus last year. And the governor went out in the press and said, yeah, the legislature doesn't know what they're doing. They produce a budget that's not balanced. And they just need to come back into session and produce a special session and produce another budget. Well, we're not going to do that. Why is she so mad? Well, we actually came in $43.2 million less than what the governor proposed. But she calls us the spenders. We produced a budget certainly less than hers, but we're the spenders. And so the governor's just being disingenuous on that whole thing, but I'm used to it. It's still the best thing to do. And in fact, next year, we got a lot more work to do. When you're spending $600 million more than what you're bringing in, how are you going to keep that going for very long? Well, that's what we face this year. And so next year, I'm already putting this out. We have got to cut $600 million out of our budget next year. So is that going to be easy? No, it's not going to be easy, but we have to be strong and we have to go in there with the attitude that we've got to cut all this fluff out. From the time I get there in January until about turnaround time, I'll have 16 meetings a day. And over half of those meetings are people coming in asking for money. I'm telling you, they are. They're asking for money. And I kind of got this pat answer. I'd say, we have a process to go through. You can go through the process. Yeah, but we need your support. And I said, well, I support the process. We have We have a process to go through, but I said, let me throw this out to you. If you're spending $600 million more than you're bringing in, how long can we keep this budget going? They said, yeah, but it's only $3 million. I said, yeah, but there's 100 of you wanting $3 million. That's $300 million. So I can cut $300 million out of the budget right there with all the people who are coming in and asking for money. So redoing the budget and really having the legislature have their hands on the budget and saying, this is our budget, they take ownership and they know that we have to do what's right. So I think it's the best thing that Tyne ever done was changing the budget system and getting our folks to really focus on owning that budget and making sure that we do what's right. And quite frankly, I have said this many times, and I don't care whether it's local, city, county, state, or federal government. Don't care which one you talk about. They're all the same. They all have the same problem, is you got all of these people coming in wanting something. And every unit of government has to get their budget in order, or our whole nation is going to be in really sick shape. I mean, you've heard about the city of Wichita. I read that in the paper here a while back, where they're going to have to either raise their mill levy or do a new sales tax. Well, how's that going to go? Can't imagine that working out very well. I know it's not going to work out well at the state, so it's time for us to really start looking at our budgets and control our budgets, because that's the only way you reduce taxes, is to take care of the budget. I think that's probably it for right now, because I know you guys want to ask questions, and Gary told me when I walk across that back, we're going to start asking questions.
Thank you, Speaker Dan.
Thank you very much.
We run a tight ship around
Yep.
here, so. Yeah. Anyway, if you have questions and you're a member, raise your hands high. I'll get to you as soon as I can. We're going to start over here with our, what is it, blue. How do you come you wear blue? That's wrong color.
Willful neglect of duty.
Willful neglect of duty.
One of the 4 things you can impeach her with. Yesterday, she passed executive order allowing truckers to drive more than the time they're allowed, which is a federal law. So if that's in the appetite of getting rid of this person a year early.
Well, I hadn't heard about that executive order by the governor. I haven't seen that. It hadn't hit my desk yet, anyway.
It was posted yesterday. It's about somehow we got gas shortage and diesel shortage.
Okay. Well, I will tell you that every year, and it's not just the Democrat governor, but our Republican governors have as well, is at harvest time they always relax the DOT rules for the farmers because they're certainly in their trucks and stuff a lot longer. But I haven't seen that one. I'll have to check on that. I have not seen that one.
If the U.S. Department of Ed gets dissolved by Trump, how does the money come back as block grants, or how does the state handle education?
Yeah, so I actually think that you're going to see that's exactly how they'll do it. They'll do it in block grants, but then how do they figure what's going to go into that block grant? That's the question right there, and that's something that they're going to have to deal with. The education department probably is going to get collapsed, at least. I don't know if they'll do away with it, but certainly it's going to get collapsed, and I think they'll probably block grant those. But also the same thing is going to happen on Medicaid.
Okay, who handles the block grant? Is it the state?
It's the state. Yeah, it would be the State Board of Education would handle it. Yeah, because we have no, that's the thing about education is we have no control over education except the purse. We're the ones that have to pay the dollars to the state board, and then they get to decide where it's going to go. It's like we several times we have done curriculum type bills saying we would like this curriculum or that curriculum, and they just thumb their nose at us because in our Constitution gives education to the state board. So the state board has the authority over that, not us. I don't think that's actually right, but hey, sometimes Constitution gets in the way of what we think is right. But it is still our Constitution, so we have to abide by it. Yeah.
So what is about Medicaid expansion, Medicaid. Do you have Medicaid for family making less than $75,000 per year?
Yeah, I've talked many times about Medicaid expansion, and Medicaid expansion is something that I have been the tip of the spear. So if you got, I own it. If you want to blame somebody for not letting Medicaid expansion come in, you can blame me, and I'm proud of it. I'm very proud of it. And real soon, you're going to see how proud I am because the people, the states who have expanded are going to be in such financial disarray that they're going to say, dang, I wish I was Kansas. I wish I hadn't have done that. Because what's going to happen is, and it's the only way that they actually can save a massive amount of money. It's about $690 billion a year. Is they're going to go away from the enhanced match. Right now, Medicaid expansion, those states get a 90-10 match on that population, on the expansion population. And what they're going to do is they're going to drop that back to what we call FMAP, which is the federal match. And for Kansas, it's a 60-40 match. So if we would have expanded Medicaid, the governor always gives numbers that just aren't true. And I know what the true numbers are simply because I've actually have on my computer the study by Aon and Associates from clear back in 2015. And literally today it would cost us right at $100 million our share. But you do away with that enhanced match, and it jumps to about $450 million a share, a year. So those states like California, New York, Pennsylvania, Indiana was the first red state that expanded Medicaid. They're going to be hurting so bad. That budget hole is going to be so massive that they're either going to have to raise taxes if they're going to keep it, or they're going to do away with it. I think what they'll actually do is they'll start paring back what they'll do is they'll put massive work requirements on those folks, just like Georgia did. You know, Georgia expanded Medicaid in a very different way. It's not the expansion that everybody else did, but they put a work requirement on it that made it to where these able-bodied people have to go to work. And guess how many people Georgia has on their Medicaid expansion population? 7,000. Not 150,000. 7,000, because they're making them go back to work. Well, why should we have to give somebody health benefits that are better than what you and I have and cost nothing if they just want to lay at home and not work? That's just ridiculous. It's just a massive boondoggle. So I will always fight that, and I think that fight's almost over. I think Trump's going to take care of that real soon, and I can't wait to see it. I cannot wait to see that day.
The good doctor stole my question, but basically Musk and Trump really want to go after this program. So you elaborate mostly on it, but what do you think they're really going to do? They're going to try to do even more than I think what you said.
Oh yeah.
What do you think they're going to do?
No, there's going to be more. There's a lot of money that are wasted just in, I'm talking about the health arena, on drugs. They're going after drug pricing, and that's a huge boondoggle as well. There's a program, and you guys have probably seen it and didn't know what it was. There's a program out there called a 340B program. And the 340B may be as big as a boondoggle as Medicaid expansion. I've never really seen the actual fraud that's involved in that as far as numbers. But here's 340B started a long time ago. And it didn't become a problem until about the last 5 or 6 years. The 340B program is a program where the manufacturers of drugs give FQHCs, which is the federally qualified health centers. Grace Med would be one of them. Hunter Health here in town. Those are FQHCs. And critical access hospitals, the small hospitals out in rural area, they give them a special pricing on the drug. And then they certainly charge more for it, and they use that delta, that difference, to increase programs for the poor, for the people who do not have health insurance or drug insurance, whatever you want to call it. Well, what's happened is the big hospitals have become, they figured a way around it, and they are killing it. They are killing the program. It's in such bad shape because it's being abused by the big hospitals. Via Christi, Wesley, KU. KU is probably the worst. I would like to know the amount of money that KU has abused the system, because I bet you it's probably $40, $50 million a year. I do not know for a fact what that is. But I do know that the Trump administration, and specifically the DOGE committee, is looking at that. I also know that the Congress, both the Senate and the House, are looking at 340B, and I think they're going to bring it back to where it was supposed to be. They're going to close those loopholes and stop all of this abuse that's going on. It's huge. It's massive.
Okay, good.
It's not just your tenacity, but your understanding of the insurance issues that have saved our state from Medicaid expansion. Speaking of your insurance skills, anything you might want to announce? What's next for you? We'd love to see you with insurance.
Stay tuned for May 13th. That's all I can say. Stay tuned for May 13th. Big announcement coming out on May 13th.
That's only a few days away. Go ahead and let
Yeah. Actually,
we won't tell anybody.
Actually, there's a reason why you can't, because if you get out and say something, you got 10 days to take action, and I'm not ready to take action yet.
Any other questions?
I was going to ask you about your opinion about marijuana. I don't smoke. But I heard that it's illegal to smoke marijuana in the state of Kansas, but not in Wichita. Am I right?
Well, not in Kansas. I mean, we don't have any place in Kansas that marijuana is illegal. We're surrounded by states with marijuana. Certainly Oklahoma, although it's medical marijuana, it's really recreational. You don't have to be, if you got a headache or a neck ache, you can get marijuana. If you got anxiety or depression, you can get marijuana. Missouri now has certainly both. Colorado has both. Nebraska is now passed medical marijuana. But Kansas is a different state. And I would tell you there are a lot of people that want medical marijuana. There are. I would also tell you in the legislature, I think it's still a hard lift. I do not see medical marijuana coming before I get out of there. So as you know, medical marijuana was passed out of the House in 22. I think it was 22. Maybe in 21. Went to the Senate. The Senate didn't take it up. They didn't take it up the next year. And I, people are on me all the time asking about medical marijuana. And I always say, when it passes the Senate, it'll come to the House, and we'll see at that time. Do I anticipate medical marijuana coming out of the Senate anytime soon? I think that body is much more conservative than I've seen it in my 13 years. So I don't actually think that it'll come out. But if it were to come out, I would say it will probably be Utah or Ohio model, where it's just pills, no smoke. I don't think you'll ever see, certainly in the near future, a medical marijuana bill come out that's just going to allow people to smoke marijuana. I don't think that'll happen. I think it'll be very medical. It'll be very medical. It's not going to be smoking. Yeah. Well, I appreciate it. I always love coming up here and sharing the information with you. I hope you go out and work really, really hard next year to get us judicial selection passed out there with our voters. Thank you.
I have a question for
Yeah.
you. So with all of the Doge things that are going on, and especially what the last one they had on the news was AmeriCorps, and all those people are now defunded. So are they now going to be coming to you for funding?
Possibly. They may possibly come to us, but I can tell you that funding is drying up. And you're going to see our folks, both in the House and the Senate, take probably a pretty hard line on, there's a lot of, most people don't realize the number of organizations out here that come to the state for funding. And they're not government organizations. They're just nonprofits or whatever. You know, and I've said this over and over and over again. Government was meant to do the things that you, as an individual or private enterprise, can't do. That's the function of government. And again, I don't care whether it's local, county, state, federal, we have went way past that. It's now time to pull the reins back and say, we just can't do all of those things. And guess what? When you do it, it's hard. Believe me, I say no all the time. And that's the only way you can do it, is say no. You have to say it in a nice way. You have to explain where you're at and why you're having to say no, because they're going to press you. They're going to press you hard. And I don't think I offend people when I tell them no, but it is time that government starts saying no to all this spending for things that we have nothing to do with. For instance, I'll give you just a for instance. So there was a bill, actually it wasn't a bill, it was a proviso in our budget to stop spending money for this summer camp where kids can go to summer camps for free. We were paying for it. You know, it started 2 years ago when we had a lot of COVID money. And I said, no, we can't do that anymore. Well, guess what? We're still doing it. But it was proposed that we would spend $6 million for that. I think we cut it down, if I remember correctly, to $3 million. But why are we doing that? That's your money. Why are we spending money to send kids to museums all over the state? And it includes here, I think Sedgwick County just had something at some place here in town about that, maybe yesterday or the day before, asking for us to continue to use that money to bring people to Wichita for that. That's not government's function. And we have to say no. We have to stop it. That's just one instance, and there's 150 more instances just like that.
Please give him a round of applause.